how can we be okay with sadness? We just need to be okay with sadness, because sadness is an authentic emotion.
Yeah.
And we need to stop wanting to fix it because we feel awkward. Yeah. Because what that does, Sally, is it makes the person who's just been, inverted commas, courageous enough to be vulnerable in front of you, if you shut them down because you can't cope with it, that compounds their grief. That makes them think, God, I've made a fool of myself. They've just walked off. They've changed the subject. They've made it about them. And it's the worst thing you can do. So let's be okay with sadness, because sadness is real.
Welcome to the Menopause Mindset Podcast with me, your host, Sally Garozzo. I'm an award-winning rapid transformational therapist, a menopause mindset coach, and the founder of the Sleep Superpower Academy. So this is the place to be to get some answers and to feel supported along this very bumpy journey. It's my mission to help peri to postmenopausal women go from feeling anxious, alone and confused to feeling positive, informed and connected. Not only about their health, but about their relationship well-being and their career fulfillment too. So even though you might be at your wit's end right now, your menopause and your whole midlife transition has the power to be so transformative that it can actually turn out to be one of the best times in your life. So thank you so much for spending the next part of your day with me. Now let's dive in. So my guest today is a loss and well-being specialist, and she enables her clients to make peace with past hurts and trauma. She helps her clients to gain the knowledge that leaning into your emotions is the best and most natural way to heal the pain. She helps people with divorce, separation, death, and loss, and helps us to realize that grief can come in many unexpected ways. Ultimately, she helps her clients to feel liberated and empowered, not by getting them to overcome the grief, but by learning to make peace with it. So Dawn Ford, welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you for inviting me.
You're so welcome. And let's start with, how are you feeling today?
Today I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling excited to tell my story and to raise awareness of the help that's out there and how you can actually work through grief. You don't, as you say, overcome it, but there are things you can put in place that make that journey a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's lovely. So it is a topic that I have recently come across in a little bit more depth than I have done before, especially when it comes to things like childlessness.
Yes.
Really realised that was a sort of grief process that one would go through. I think I had it in the back of my mind, but I experienced grief, touched on it when I split up with my now husband a few years ago. And I went through this really, just weird patch and didn't quite understand that it was grief until a homeopath said, I think what you're experiencing is grief. And I'd never really experienced anything like it before. But I do see it a bit in my practice. So I would love to learn more from you, Dawn, about grief, and I'm sure our listeners would as well. Let's start with how you became interested in working with people around the subject of grief.
Oh, big question. Okay, so if I go way back, I think the reason I've been pulled towards this kind of field to work in, if you like, is when I was younger, I had two friends who lost their mum when they were very young, primary school age. And I'm still very close to my mum. And I remember thinking, my God, how do you cope? How do you carry on? It was an incomprehensible loss for me. And in 2006, I volunteered as a children's bereavement sort of officer, if you like, support worker for what was then a local charity called Noah's Ark. And it was incredible. It was unbelievably moving. The one memory I have that sticks out in my mind is what they call candle time. And this was when all the children were gathered in semi-darkness with a candle that they lit in memory of somebody that was no longer here. And it was such a profound thing to witness. And it really, really pulled on the heartstrings. But when I left there, so it was a residential for 3 days, something changed, something shifted in me. And it was a weird shift because it was actually about, okay, we're all going to die. Fact, Dawn. You have to face this. And I'd always kept some of my children's favourite clothes, or my favourites of their clothes. And I had black bags full of them. And I thought, when I die, I could see this scenario of my son and daughter saying to my husband, you can't chuck them. She's kept them for 30 years or something. And I thought, I need to do something here. I need to declutter. I need to free myself of the sentimental pull that was really strong. So, cut a very long story short, I thought I'm going to make them a keepsake. And so, with a shaking hand, I cut up my son's favourite Paddington jumper or dungarees and my daughter's beautiful petticoat dresses and pyjamas. And I made them a keepsake that was based on their first toys, their first soft toy. And it blew me away. It absolutely blew me away. So since 2006, I've been making these keepsakes for other people. And generally it's a cushion and it's made out of shirts or skirts or blouses. And the connection you have with that thing that you can hug, there's almost no words. And I realized the strength of the connection between the emotion, the memory, and the tactileness of the cloth was quite extraordinary. So I've been doing that since 2006. And when my customers were coming to me, they would sit and talk in my room, and I just knew there was something more that I could be doing. So I've been making these keepsakes, and then in 2009, a dear and beautiful friend of mine was given, just the world-shattering news that she had terminal cancer. And there was no offer of chemotherapy. There was no time to seek a second opinion. It was just earth-shattering. So what happened was that her husband was looking after, the children were at school or in daycare. And so he would be with his wife in the day, and then I would go in the evening and sit with her in the hospice. And oh my God, I'll be eternally grateful for those cherished days and evenings we spent together. And one of the things that came out of that time was that she wanted to do a different program that I'd gone to in London many years before to try and heal myself, because I have many autoimmune diseases. And I'd gone on this workshop, and she sort of said, Dawn, let's do it, let's do it. And so I did. And of course she was exhausted and the energy wasn't there, but we did do as much as we could. And part of that journey, which is different from the program I do now, but there's a similar crossover, was that you visualize going back around a campfire and you're with the people that you love and want to apologize to, or that maybe have hurt you. And it was that kind of visualization and release that was such a privilege to watch and witness. And I knew when she sobbed afterwards, and she said it was the first time she'd cried since her dad had died a few months before, I knew that her soul was lighter. And it just blew me away. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. It just blew me away. So that was such an amazing privilege. And I do that with the grief recovery. But the link with the keepsakes is that while dear Melanie was in hospital, I'd made some things for her out of my clothes. And then I made a driver bag for her morphine out of her mum and dad's silk ties and silk scarves. And I created that bag for her, and I gave it to her on the day that she was married. She was getting married in the chapel, in the hospice.
Yeah.
I wanted her parents to be with her. And she wore that bag. She kept the wrap thing I made for her on her stomach. She kept this little whittle doll that I made for her, that she would talk to at night when I wasn't there, and I called her Jenny. And so these things that I made her, and 2 out of 3 were made out of clothes that were special, After she died, I went into the funeral undertakers. I don't know why. I have no idea. I found myself sat at their desk and just sort of, I don't know, I just didn't know what to do, what to say. And the gentleman said, she's got 3 things with her in the casket. And I said, oh gosh, it didn't dawn on me at all. And he said, well, there's a bag and there's an embroidered thing and there's this little doll. I sobbed again. I absolutely, really, really cried. And I realised also that she had chosen, or her family had chosen, for her to take that on to wherever we go next, whatever you believe. And so that's my story. That's why I make the keepsakes. And that's why I do the loss and wellbeing work I do, mainly the grief recovery method. Because the chance to make peace or let go before you do leave this world, or even in the relationship you're in and you're struggling, and if you can let go and make peace, then that makes that relationship breathe again. It's just so incredible.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. And it's really, what struck me about it was the tenderness, the kindness of making those objects which are just full of meaning. They're not, it's not like a Chanel handbag or something, which might have meaning for someone, but it's got this sort of glitzy feel to it. These objects that you're making actually hold a real sort of precious meaning and memory, which somebody can take with them.
Massively so. I mean, when somebody gets in touch, they say, I know exactly the shirt. They say, what do you need? And I say, well, anything that you can cope with being deconstructed, because I deconstruct to reconstruct, so to speak. And I say, you have to be okay with seeing it in a different format, but it has to have meaning, otherwise it won't work. And they'll go, I know the shirt, I know the blouse, I know what it is. And they send it through the post, and then I send them back tracked and signed for, etc. And it seems so simple, but it's so powerful. And that connection's there forever. And you can laugh and cry and scream into and punch and cuddle, this cushion. It's it's profound stuff.
How do you cope every day working with people who are going through loss and grief? And I know for me, there is a beauty in supporting people through grief and loss. And there is a real kind of rawness and an opening up of sensation within you. But I wouldn't necessarily feel like I wanted to go to that place voluntarily every day. And so as a therapist, I'm just curious to know, being nosy really, how do you deal with that?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, anybody that works in the field of emotions, bereavement, grief, death, etc., it can take its toll. There's no doubt about it. And so you need to be able to take that time out. So for me, it is my daily coffee in a beautiful coffee shop. It is sketching. It is reading, garden, as well as seeing clients. And I need that. But if I can be absolutely honest, because this program, the one I'm talking about is the grief recovery method, because it takes you from a place, obviously, of grief, whatever the grief is. Many of my clients are actually going through a divorce. Many of them have suffered abuse. Many of them have been bullied. There's all sorts of losses. And when they come to me and I start literally on session 1, opening up about how we've got it so wrong in society, about grief, about emotions, about being vulnerable, about crying, you can see this light bulb trigger. And there's a book with the program called the Grief Recovery Handbook. And they read that and they come back and they have reflective homework and we discuss it. And it builds such incredible awareness of not just the way that they have dealt or tried to deal with their grief or their divorce or whatever it is, but also multi-generational. So it's an educational loss supporting program. It isn't counselling. It isn't therapy. it's loss supporting profoundly. But it's, you unlearn everything we've ever been taught, and that is the shift, and it's straight away.
Right. Yeah.
It's straight away.
So what have we been taught as a society about grief and letting go and loss?
Where do you want me to start? Okay, so there are so many myths. These are beliefs that have been handed down, as I say, intergenerational. So, for instance, so many people come to me and they say that they've been told, they wouldn't want you to be sad. They led a good life. And that could be the case. It could be that whoever is no longer here did have a good life, and they may not want you to be sad. But when you have loved somebody and that love is no longer there and they're no longer there, well, actually the love is, you carry the love, but they're not there, then you can feel devastated, bereft. So it doesn't make sense, somebody trying to say, look, don't be sad, because you're naturally feeling sad. So if somebody says to you, and they say it many times, for goodness sake, don't be sad, they had a good life, or they were a good age, or they're no longer suffering. If people keep saying that all the time, what happens is that you think, am I grieving wrong? Am I failing? What's wrong with me? Why do I feel sad? Because everybody's saying I shouldn't be sad. And so that's where we get it wrong. Or they'll say things like, and hands up, I was guilty of this before I did my training, I was guilty of this too. So they may say things like, they're in a better place. Could be true, we don't know. And I have my own beliefs, but I have had people whose sons have died. There's been suicide. There's been terrible tragedy. And they have been said this so many times that they actually say, for goodness sake, if it's such a great place, why aren't I there? I'm going to join him or her. It's insensitive. And we are insensitive because we want, you can't see me maybe doing this, I'm holding up the quote kind of fingers here, but everybody wants us to feel better, to no longer be sad, to be fixed. And you can't fix, we're not broken. We just need to be heard. We need somebody to hold a safe space where we feel we can trust them with everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, where it's confidential, where it's validated. And then this wonderful opportunity. So you don't only unlearn what we've been taught, which is incredibly unhelpful, what we have been taught, but also that opportunity to apologize and to forgive or let go. It's like starting afresh. For me, personally, because I had to do the program on myself, it was like multiple light bulbs, and it was like I couldn't breathe properly with so much trauma, grief, stress inside my body. I was just treading water. And then when I did the program and I looked back at relationships that had really affected me, it was like I started from base. I had all this energy and lightness to love and live again.
Can you do the program even if you haven't gone through a particular sort of big landmarky, grievy sort of experience, like the death? Yeah, 'cause it strikes me as being something that would be very useful anyway to deconstruct our own bias.
Oh, it's massively so. I mean, I had one lady reach out. She'd lost her mum and dad within 12 months, going back about 3 years. She didn't think she was grieving properly, in inverted commas, that was her words. And I said, well, by all means, come along for the first session and see what you think. At the end of the first session, I had this gut instinct that it was previous toxic relationship that was actually overwhelming her. But she didn't know that. And so, the client needs to realise this themselves. I mean, I sort of just maybe put the odd thing out there and then they grab it if they want to. By session 3, and there's 8 sessions with this program, she brought it up herself and she said, I'll always miss my mum and dad, and I am grieving and I'm desperately sad. But what is really affecting my mental health and my anxiety And my relationship with my now husband is my ex-husband. And so we worked on that.
Yeah, it did make me think that it doesn't necessarily have to be the death or the big divorce that's happening right now. It can be other things that have shown up in your life that sort of snowball,
absolutely.
really.
Well, the definition of grief we use, one of them, is that we grieve any significant change in a familiar pattern of behaviour, or a change or an end of a familiar pattern of behaviour. So that's anything. That's your career, that's your health, that's your marriage, that's your relationship, that's your friendships, that's the house you live in, the school you go to. It's huge. It's huge. And like you said right at the beginning, Sally, that you felt that you were struggling or suffering or hurting so badly, and then somebody, I think said it was homeopathic, somebody said to you, I think you're grieving. And that's it. We grieve significant life losses.
Yeah, I think that's why many people are grief-stricken at the moment with the pandemic, and they're perhaps not naming it as grief.
No, but they're feeling it. But you see, society doesn't recognise it. Society recognises the word grief with bereavement only. It doesn't recognise it with divorce or abusive relationships or health loss, and the menopause, which is a huge loss as well. It just doesn't see it, but it's real and it's there.
What does you say instead? I mean, things like, we talk about anxiety and depression, but they're just symptoms of grief, surely then.
Yeah. I mean, when you think of it, for myself, how I got into this work was because I was struggling with stress, trauma, unresolved grief for many years. And then what happened to me is I got ill. I got autoimmune disease at 32. I got an underactive Hashimoto's autoimmune at 42. I then got cancer. I got pernicious anemia. I got blah, 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 it just went on.
Wow.
And I still continued to teach. I was an art tutor for 12 years. And one day, fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue came knocking on my door. And it floored me. I felt something inside me had died. It absolutely floored me. And intuitively, I knew that my mind, body, and soul was saying, no more, stop.
Yeah.
So I left work. I left my job. I had to leave due to ill health. It was my decision, but I knew I couldn't continue. And that was in 2011. It took me 5 years to be well enough to even think about studying again or taking on a job. And that's when I did this training in 2016. And that's when I had this light bulb moment that so many things in my life, relationships, things that were traumatic, yes, death and pet loss comes into that. But it's also those things that we grieve that we never had, but we felt we should have had or wanted. So loss isn't just what you've had and it's gone. It's what you never had but wanted as well.
Like children, if you
children, a career, a family, supportive partner. It's all of those things.
And I think those things come up quite a lot at midlife, don't they? For me, it was a big sort of knock on the door that said, you don't have everything that you thought you'd have at this age. I remember being in my teenage years, actually, and foolishly thinking, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
And then, you think you've got all of that stuff ahead of you and there's all this opportunity in front of you. And then you hit a certain point and you're like, oh gosh, there's not all this opportunity in front of me anymore. And it's a massive reality check. And and I know a lot of my clients and your clients go through this sort of wake up call, the loss of what we never had. Yeah.
Yeah. I know we'll come back on to the childlessness and the menopause, but there's one lady I helped at the beginning of the year, and her husband died suddenly from a heart attack, and he was months away from their retirement. And they had plans, to travel or to, I don't know, go abroad in a caravan or get a dog or whatever it is that you thought, when I retire, and then it's snatched. It's just gone.
Mm.
And so that's a loss of your hopes, dreams, and expectations, as is having a family.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's go on to menopause then. Why does menopause feel very griefy?
Well, of course, grief is completely and utterly individual. It's a personal thing. But as I said, because we grieve all that is no more, and from my own personal experience with the menopause, it's had it's been such a wake up call. Yes, positive. I don't miss the periods. They were awful, painful, and I don't miss that. But everything else I miss. So what do I miss? What's my loss? Well, there's the loss of energy, concentration, rationality, sleep, hair. When I first was diagnosed with the perimenopause and then the menopause, and also because I've got underactive thyroid, the hair thins. I miss my calmer moods. I miss that sort of self-love and that sort of premenopausal confidence. So it's huge because you're no longer the person you were.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a big change.
It's huge. It's huge. And yet I think going back in time, it was something that, all women go through to some extent or another. And nobody talked about it, like they never talked about periods, and and they don't talk about mental health. It's one of those things, menopause, just get on with it. But as I saw the other day, just because it's a natural process doesn't mean to say it's an easy one, and it isn't for so many people. I've got two little examples that come to mind just of how this can affect some people. So I was talking to a lady only the other day, and she talked about her menopausal journey and how she thought she was actually going mad.
Yeah.
She went from a calm, logical thinking, confident, adventurous career woman overnight or over time to an anxious, irrational woman who she didn't recognise the person she'd become. And I thought, God, how sad is that?
Mm.
It's so sad. And then there's another lady. I was putting up, because I'm an artist as well, and I was putting up some artwork in an exhibition locally to where I live. And this artist just started to talk to me about my program, I think. What do you do? When I was telling her. And she mentioned the menopause. So she obviously connected that with loss. Mm. And she told me this comment that really hits at home, I think. She said that her mother said to her, your dad would go out to work every day and he'd always kiss me. And his kisses never felt the way they used to.
Oh,
I know. Oh God, I got goosebumps now. So according to this lady's mum, in her mind, she really felt that the love was different. Yeah. And I bet the love was no different. But because the menopause mucks up your hormones and everything else, she would sit on the stairs, her mum, and cry. Oh. And he left. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does change the way you look at things.
It does.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a time of huge reflection and doing that deeper work. It's an opportunity. It's hard.
It's hard.
I mean, I heard somebody say that perimenopause is meant to be hard, because I think it was Kate Codrington that said that actually on one of her podcasts, and she said it to be hard. We grow through that struggle. And I think we do, actually. I know I have grown through the struggle. How do you feel about grief being something similar, in that we're forever changed after we go through a patch of grief, and that is usually for the better. But, we have to go through that dark night of the soul and all of that soul searching to actually come out the other side.
We do. I mean, I think one of the things that I mention to clients is that with any loss that's traumatic or significant, what we all need is somebody that walks with us. So I often say, you don't want to be led, and you don't want somebody behind you pushing. You want somebody at your side who's listening to you where it's at. So it's honest. It's that person needs to be non-judgmental. I'm talking about a partner, a friend, or somebody like myself, or a therapist or a counsellor, because we need to be heard. Because society is so bad at sadness and at grief, society wants to solve everything. It doesn't like uncertainties. It wants to fix. So if you go back to a scenario, say, I don't know, your first love and you split up, and your parents or your best friend say something like, all you need is to go out on the town, you need to book yourself a holiday, treat yourself, go out with the girls or whatever it is. It's because they don't want to see you sad. But actually, if that was your first love and it meant a lot, you're going to be sad.
Yeah.
So those things that people want us to distract ourselves with, if we're not careful, it becomes a routine, a fallback for life. So why am I eating more now? Oh, okay, my dog's just died, or I'm going to lose my job. Why am I turning to alcohol more? Because it's natural to do these things. We need to have coping strategies, and that's normal. But over a long period of time, if you're doing that and you're spending too much, or pre-COVID, you're on that plane traveling, anywhere to get away from whatever you're feeling, it will always be there, and it will make you ill. It will come out. It has to come out. It's emotional energy. And so when you talk, you release it. When you share and you're not judged, it's released, as is with crying. If you keep all that pent up inside, you will suffer. So with me, I got the fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and all the autoimmunes before that. Most people, thankfully, don't get that sort of record that I've got. And thank God for it. But as soon as I did the program, my fibromyalgia more or less disappeared.
Wow.
My pain went overnight.
Yeah.
I still have fatigue, which is the chronic fatigue part of it. So I have to pace myself. But I can bounce back to 70% energy now after, say, 24 hours rest, whereas before it'd be 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And that is the joy of sharing and being heard and resolving stuff, you say.
Yeah, moving through the emotion and not just putting the armour on and that fake positivity. I mean, that's kind of how I was raised, to have that sort of go-getting attitude and that sort of, step up to the plate and just brush yourself off and
be strong.
Yeah, my dad really hated it when I cried, and I could see him not wanting to experience me crying particularly. He didn't know how to deal with it.
No.
And so what you've said is really interesting there. I suppose my curiosity is leading me to ask the question, well, how do we make sadness more okay in the world?
I don't even know how to answer that, but what I could say, what comes straight to mind is a biggie, but I think we all need to realise that sadness is a human emotion.
Yeah.
So we can be, as human beings, we have the capacity to feel everything, from sadness to joy, from pride, shame, and in a quick succession. Personally, I know I've woken up happy, something's happened, and then in 30 minutes, I feel anxious or concerned, or maybe even shocked, because life is unpredictable. So how can we be okay with sadness? We just need to be okay with sadness, because sadness is an authentic emotion.
Yeah.
And we need to stop wanting to fix it because we feel awkward. Yeah. Because what that does, Sally, is it makes the person who's just been, inverted commas, courageous enough to be vulnerable in front of you, if you shut them down because you can't cope with it, that compounds their grief. That makes them think, God, I've made a fool of myself. They've just walked off. They've changed the subject. They've made it about them. And it's the worst thing you can do. So let's be okay with sadness, because sadness is real. It's there. I'm not saying it's the best of the emotions, but it's authentic, it's real, it's honest. And if you lean into those emotions, like you said in my introduction, they pass quicker. When we bottle them up, we try to block them out and we deny them, our heart and our body are out of sync. And that's when we can get chronic illness. That's when things like, in my case, fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, we can get asthma, migraines, IBS, anxiety, depression. All these things are outward signs and symptoms that we're not coping. And in inverted commas, we're not coping because we're not sharing what we're trying to deny. And our body knows it's not a truth. It's not emotionally truthful. So we've got to be okay with sadness. I hope that answers it a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do. We have to be honest. And I think the word "stop fighting" comes up. Stop fighting with what is.
Because you know what? When you fight, you're using all your energy to fight. If you accept and lean in, you use less energy.
Yeah, you go with the flow, I suppose. That's that analogy.
You do. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have had clients who have been carrying stuff for 30 years, a lifetime. And what's amazing about the program is that they get this insight, they get this profound awareness, and it changes the way they are with everyone, their partner, their children, the children they teach, the patients they have, the barista that's making their coffee. Everything changes.
Yeah,
everything changes. It's quite incredible, because when you're denying or attempting to block out, you're still carrying that inside, and it is there. It's in your chest, it's in your heart, it's in your lungs, it's in your stomach, it's in your bowel. So it will affect your tone of voice, the words you use, the language you choose. It has to.
It reminds me of something that happened to me yesterday, actually. I'll be very honest. I mean,
let's do it.
My listeners could probably hear it in my voice today. I'm not as bouncy as I usually am. I think I'm coming on or something. I'm feeling a bit weird, and got a very busy day today. And yesterday I was so grumpy and sort of slightly shut down, actually. I'd sort of closed off a little bit, and I knew I was doing it, but that's okay when you're aware that you're doing it, because you can get yourself out of it as well. But I was just rushed off my feet, and my husband was poorly, and I felt like, it's all on me. You know, that feeling.
I do.
Just complete overwhelm. And I took Joey out for a walk with Graham, and we went round it was pitch black. We went round the field that we usually go in. It's enclosed. And when I reached into my pocket to get the car key out, I said to Graham, I don't have the car key. It's fallen out. And I recognised that it's because I had got the dog treats out with such like aggression and anger.
Yes. You didn't want to do it, so it's come here.
Yeah, that's right. The key had fallen out, and I thought to it didn't have to be like that. If I had actually expressed myself, and if I was softer, and if I wasn't fighting with myself,
you've got it.
I wouldn't have lost the key, which obviously caused more stress, compounded on top of already being quite stressed. So
it's layer upon layer, isn't it? I mean, you're reminding me of something too. So many years ago, I did night school, a basic intro or intermediate to counselling, and I didn't take it further. I went down the education teaching path. But anyway, I remember this counsellor teacher saying, "What's the one small thing you can do that would really mean a lot to you?" And at the time, my son and daughter was something like 7 and 5 or something. And I remember thinking, I just want to sit down when I get home I was studying. I want to sit down and drink a hot cup of tea right to the end. That's what I want to do. Because what I was doing, and I laugh at myself now, but my goodness, I'm a different person now. I would be studying, I'd take them to school, and then I'd be studying, and then I'd go straight from the place that I was studying, the college or the art college. And then when I'd be in the car, my daughter used to say, "What's for tea, Mum?" And I used to think, "Oh God, I'm so stressed. Don't ask me what's for tea. I don't know what's for tea." And I'd say something like, "Well, we'll see what's in the fridge when we get in." And then I go straight in. I put their school bags down. I go straight in and start making tea or give them a snack and go on with my homework and their homework. And it was like autopilot, Sally. So when this counselling teacher said to me, "Just do it. It's got to be achievable. It's got to be realistic." I thought, yeah, okay. I'll sit down for 10 minutes and drink a hot cup of tea. And I did. And it changed me completely. I just took time out. And then I wasn't whizzing. And I could breathe and I could slow down instead of thinking I had to be Superwoman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. When we just allow ourselves, because often we think, oh, there's no time. We don't have, and I think that's why we push sadness down as well.
Yes.
Because we think if we grieve, then we're going to open Pandora's box and nothing ever will get done ever again. But it doesn't work like that. In your opinion, what's it like when we start taking the layers off?
When we start to unpick, because people often talk about it as an onion, don't they now? They talk about it, these multiple layers. The one thing I'll say about, all I can talk about is the program that I deliver and support people with. You need to be ready. So you need to be willing to do the work. It is one hell of an emotional journey. And it isn't easy because you go back right to the beginning. You look closely at all your losses, which, as I say, is not just bereavements. You then look at two relationships very closely. And then you acknowledge, gosh, I could have done that better. I wish I hadn't said that, or I wish I had said that. So that opportunity to apologise, and then things that they've done that are still hurting you. Because they're unresolved. They're still in your energy. They're still in your mantra. They're still in your soul. So when you release that, it's so amazing. And so you start slowly, I suppose, peeling back. And because it's educational, these light bulb moments happen pretty much straight away. At the end of session 1, I can have people say, wow, that makes so much sense. Why aren't we teaching this in schools? Which, by the way, I'm trying to do. I do another program called Helping Children with Loss, which is phenomenal for anybody who works with or cares for children. But that's a similar thing. You get all these light bulb moments of where we're going wrong. Yeah. With regards to loss, grief, crying, bereavement, it's all there. So when you start peeling it back, you get this insight, and you just learn. I think maybe you learn, or I encourage you to lean in. And there are tears, and sometimes there's sobbing, but sometimes there isn't. It's quiet, and everybody's different. But I've only ever had one woman say to me when I first started, maybe in my second year, and she said something like, "I'm really worried if I start crying, I won't be." And I have to be honest, and I said to her, I cannot guarantee that's going to happen. I think it's highly unlikely. I've never known it. I think you'll feel liberated, empowered at the end of it, but this is your choice, whether you continue or not. And she did stop crying. She did. But I have to be honest, I don't have a crystal ball. Some people, you do open a Pandora's box, of course you do. And you have to be they need to trust you that you're going to support them through it. Yeah. And I do 100%. But I've never known anyone, ever say, look, I can't stop crying, because most people, you see, when you lean in and you do cry, you release something each time.
And you get that clarity as well, don't you? Even if
yes.
when I was in the throes of grief, I was crying a lot, a few times a day, but it comes in waves. And I think that when you finish crying, there's a sense of relief, and then it builds up and it builds up again, and then you cry again, and then again it's a sense of relief. It's almost like having a stomach bug and going to the toilet over and over again, but eventually it comes up.
That's right. And the thing is with grief, when I first started my training, which is back in 2016, I think that the belief was that we grieved 24/7, and it was all intense. And if you can imagine a piece of paper, which is normally what I show or do for my clients, we used to believe that it hit every side and all in the middle. It's all a black mess or a red mess or whatever you want to call it. And then people thought that over time, that it would subside and disappear. But now we realise that it doesn't. And intuitively, I knew that wasn't the case. So what they're saying now is, in the early throes of grief, it can feel all-consuming like that. And over time, with action, so that's crying, that's talking to somebody, that's maybe reaching out for therapy, counselling, or the grief recovery method. And when you work through that, and your grief is acknowledged and validated, etc., and you learn these emotional tools that build up your resilience, which is what I do with the program. It enables you to move through it, but you carry the love. You still carry the sadness because you're always going to miss that person. Bearing in mind it's a loving relationship. I have a lot of clients, because not all relationships are loving. And that is one thing to say, and I help people with that as well. It isn't, I've had people say, it's about my ex-wife and it's still affecting me, but, there's no love lost there, etc., etc. And I can say, if it's unresolved, I can help you. So it's unloving relationships as well. And I think that it's just an incredible opportunity to say these things and to release and to cry and to know it's okay to cry. It's more than okay to cry. It's actually really healthy, mentally and physically.
Yeah. Do we, in your opinion, if there's been a really deep loss, quite a lot of tragedy, do we ever 100% heal?
I don't know whether we heal. Somebody I did a podcast with recently doesn't like the word recovery and grief recovery. And I understand, and I explained it to her. I mean, this is not my choice. This is the method that I deliver, and I believe in it. But I think recovery is a strange choice for some people. So recovery may make people think that you do get over it. And then one day you wake up and you've no longer got a broken heart. I don't think that's the case at all. I think the recovery element is that you're able to resolve what's unresolved. You're able to make peace with something that you've been carrying that's caused you intense sadness or trauma. That's what I think. So do we ever 100% move on? No. I still feel sad about my dear friend and that she was taken so young. I still miss my gran, who died at an amazing age of 105. I kiss her photo and I can feel sad when I think of her. I think it's always there.
But I think the fact that I even asked that question goes to show how uncomfortable we are with holding sadness and grief throughout our entire life. Like it's not normal to not heal,
Yeah, because we want to be, again, I'm holding my fingers up for that quote marks, because we want to be fixed. And the thing is that we're human, we have these knocks, we have these experiences, and we can resolve what's unresolved to a point. We can be heard, and that's massive. But, if, I don't know, I've had people who've lost children and baby loss, and I've said to them so many times, this program can help you resolve what's unresolved. It can support you and build up your emotional resilience. It will enable you to be heard on all those things that you feel nobody else will listen to, that people may judge you for. But please remember, the love continues, your sadness may continue, and you will more than likely, and I cannot put words in your mouth, miss them forever.
Yeah.
And that's me being honest.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's definitely, it's changing my perspective. Just as I'm talking to you, I'm gaining so much actually from this conversation.
Thank you, Sally.
And also, it reminds me of something that Gabor Mate said, that recovery just means to re-uncover what is already there. And I really like that. So recovery doesn't necessarily mean to be fully fixed and fully healed, but you just open yourself up and you re-uncover parts of you that you might have pushed down.
And most of us do, because it's uncomfortable, it hurts, it's messy, it's complicated. And most people in society, people that know me, why are you doing such a depressing job? And I think it is not depressing. It is a privilege, because you are, as I was with my dear friend, when she was in the hospice, such a profound privilege to listen to somebody tell you their emotional truth, trust you enough to share some deep stuff, and then to release it. I mean, before they die. Wow. It's just incredible.
Incredible. A real privilege. So I just want to end on something, because we're coming to the end of our time together. What should we say to people who are grieving? What's not going to trigger them?
Okay, so again, I'm going to be really honest, because I can only speak from my perspective and my point of view. So the thing that I say, if I can be honest, is that I don't know what to say. So I will say that to them. I am so sorry for your loss. I don't know what to say. And then nearly everyone will say to me, thank you, there is nothing to say.
Yeah.
And one guy, amazing guy, I taught him at the college, and he died. I think he was only 30, early 30s. And for the first time ever, I felt so desperately sad when I heard that he died. I didn't know what to say to mum and dad, and I also know mum and dad. And this is not like me, because I normally say what I just said to you. Anyway, I walked past their house with the dog, and it was darkness, and I heard this voice shout me, "Dawn forward." And I thought, oh no, what am I going to say? Oh my God, I don't know what to say. And I could feel my heart pounding, and my voice went tight, and my mouth dried up, and I thought, I don't know what to say. And he just stood in front of me, and this is pre-COVID, so I think I hugged him, but he certainly asked me to hug him anyway. And I just stood there, and I just cried, and I just said, oh my God, I'm just so sorry. So sorry. I don't know what to say. And he was another one that said, there was nothing to say, hug me.
Oh.
And that's what it is. The worst thing we can do is to dismiss it, to avoid somebody, to walk on the other side of the street, to change the subject. Those make those who are grieving or struggling feel even more awkward, feel even more isolated.
Wow. Oh, gosh.
No, have a shake. Have a shake now.
Thank you.
The whole body shake. It's been a privilege to tell my story and to share about my program I deliver. Thank you so much, Sally.
They're very big emotions and very big feelings right now. And it's been a hard podcast actually for me. I'm not going
to lie.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it for listening.
No.
Yeah, and I've on many occasions wanted to bawl my eyes out, but I've got to run the show. So, but I have learned so much from you, and thank you so much for just sharing so openly, so honestly, and articulately as well, and explaining everything. It's made a huge difference, and your work sounds so life-changing for people who are going through this these experiences. So it's called the Grief Recovery Method. It's 8 sessions. And do you work via Zoom or in the room?
Both.
Okay. And people can contact you. I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes, but where are you most active on social media?
Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Well, I hope you will go and follow Dawn in all her wisdom and reach out to her if there's anything that you feel you want to communicate. If you want help, do reach out to her because she's brilliant and she's very empathic. She knows what she's talking about. So thank you so much, Dawn.
Oh, Sally, I'm putting up my hands to pray here for you. You can't see it, but thank you so much. I am so appreciative and grateful for this opportunity.
So I hope you enjoyed that episode. Do come on over to Instagram and let me know what your thoughts and feelings are about today's podcast, or you can even drop me an email, info@sallygarozzo.com. And just a reminder that the doors to the Sleep Superpower Academy will be opening early next year. We start in March 2022. So if you're struggling with your sleep and you really want to get on the wait list for this amazing course and community, then just visit sallygarozzo.com/join the waitlist sleep. So all that's left for me to do now is wish you a very beautiful Christmas, no matter what that looks like to you. And if you want something, a little personal treat, I did a post on Instagram. It's black and it's called How to Work with the Darkness Instead of Against It This Winter. And there's a beautiful little ritual on that, posted on that. So if you want something a bit different that can help get you through this darkness or whatever challenges that you're feeling right now, then you might like to have a look at that post. Remember, if you're liking these podcasts and you really believe in getting the word out there about menopause health, then please subscribe and leave a review too. It just means that we get to reach out to more people who need to hear this message. And happy people means a happy world. Your interaction might very well help to save another person's sanity. So that's all from me. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.